Welcome, everybody, to the Abundant Tennis Online Coaching Podcast, where today we have episode 1 of the college tennis series, where I interview college tennis players on what their journey was like to get to where they are, what their life was like as a junior, their training, some of the things they went through, the tournaments they played, their UTR, their rankings, everything. We want to try to get to the core of how did these kids make it to where they are, so that you listeners out there can get a good understanding of what you need to be doing to put yourself in position to get to where they are right now. And today's first guest happens to be an amazing person, an amazing player, Murphy Cassone from Arizona State University, currently ranked 300 in the world professionally, one of the best college players, 2023 NCAA singles semifinalist, multiple time All-American player, was number 1 in his recruiting class. Just a great guest to have on to talk about his journey, what it was like to get there, what happened when he was struggling at a young age, what happened when he burnt out a bit, how did he get through it. He decided to take the ITF route at some point because he was actually struggling in the USTA one, and so he just decided to try something different. Really brings a lot of insight to what I think was a really interesting journey. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. We're going to be doing a lot more of these. And if you're a player yourself and you want to be on this podcast and share your journey, please reach out to me. I'm going to want to be getting Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, every type of conference division. I want it all out there so that everybody has as much information so that they can really understand what it's like to get to where you are. So without any further ado, let's get right into the conversation with Murphy. Murphy, thanks for jumping on, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me, JY.
Yeah, man. Thanks. You've had a really busy fall playing a lot of tournaments.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that you can be the very first guest of the college tennis series that I want to be doing to try to help put up more information. It's interesting. I think we can sometimes live in our own bubble within what
Mhm.
we've known within tennis. But, throughout my time, I've just found out there's thousands of kids that are playing tennis but don't really have an understanding of what it actually takes, because not everybody, and this is where we're going to start with your journey coming from Kansas. That's going to be
Yeah.
that's different than somebody like me, born and raised in Miami, where there's already a lot of high performance tennis. But just trying to get as much info on, hey, what is it like to get into college tennis, and how the success you've had as a junior that helped you get into a good spot. So thank you for doing this, and we'll get started with that. Kansas. Started tennis, I think, around age 6. Is that right?
Yeah, or my parents had me out there like swinging a racket when I was in diapers, like right when I could hold it.
So, and,
So
and why? Did they play tennis or what?
yeah, they played for fun. My dad's family played growing up, and then my mom, I guess, was playing when she was older. Yeah, that's how my parents met, was on a tennis court actually. But
Okay, wow,
yeah,
that's funny.
they just had me in it really early, right when I could. So
But what was tennis like in Kansas? I mean, would you remember that? I know at some point you moved to Florida. We'll
yeah,
get to that, but
yeah, Kansas, there's a bunch of academies there. So usually you're going to one of those academies like where it's after school, like 4 to 6 p.m., and then practicing an hour or so, maybe with a coach if your parents like want that. And yeah, but there's not a ton of players there as you progress and get older. So our biggest thing was we didn't want to keep playing with the same people, same practicing with the same people and playing matches with the same people. So right when I got to about like 8 or 9 years old, parents we made the decision to move to Florida for better like competition and better just practices and coaching and all that. But early on in Kansas, it's very good. I think. I mean, there's a lot of academies there that do a good job developing. But then once you start to develop outside of that, you need to try and find a better way to get good competition, I think.
yeah, and also, I mean, you moved a little bit young, but I don't imagine there to be too many tournaments. Also, especially not as many as there are down here.
Mhm.
Kids probably have to travel a little bit more being in Kansas, right?
Yeah, yeah. And when you're in Kansas, you're in the Missouri Valley region, so you're going to be spread out between Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Iowa, and then I believe certain parts of other. There's certain parts of Illinois, I think, but I think those are the states primarily. So
And that's tough because you have to bounce to other states. If I mean, as you found out later on, you can kind of stay in South Florida most of the year, and rarely
Yeah.
have to get on too many flights, right? So yeah, but then so you moved when you're 8 to 9, so you've been playing tennis for a few years. But how many days a week were you playing at that age already when you were 7, 8, and 9?
My parents had me playing almost every day besides Sunday, and as many hours as possible. When I was in Kansas, I don't remember too much, but I think I was going 3 4 hours. I remember a lot of like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. car rides home. And then yeah, when we were in Florida, when I was like 8 9 10, I was playing a ton of hours, like because I was at an academy, so I'd go 2 3 hours in the morning, 2 3 hours in the afternoon, and then like a private lesson or two here and there.
So
But
you were pretty all in, pretty young, right? I mean,
yeah,
were you playing? Did you find time for any other sports? Did it not interest you? What was that?
no, my parents. I played baseball in fourth grade a little bit, but my parents really wanted to specialize me in tennis, which I think is huge for the sport, for like a player's development too. But I definitely think my journey early on, I probably played a little too much tennis, honestly, and it didn't give me a ton of time, like breathing room to explore other things outside of it. Whereas, I mean, I really don't think someone should be needing to play like 5 6 hours of tennis a day, especially if you make the first couple hours really efficient and organized.
So, did you ever find that there was a time where you're like, I kind of need to take a break from tennis. This is a little bit too much, or or you're like, I'm tired playing a lot, but I mean, I still love it. I mean, did you ever come to any crossroads like that when you were a junior?
When I got into high school a little bit, like 13 14, those ages, I really felt it. But when I was like 8 9 10, I think the amount of hours I was on court, it wasn't efficient. So I was just like half the time you're doing like silly games and stuff, which I think is good for a piece of it, but not like for a whole day almost. So yeah, but when I really got into high school, I that's when I start to feel felt that, and yeah, would take breaks in the winter, and practices wouldn't be as efficient, and yeah, it was a slow build up where it would just hinder the player a lot. I think mentally.
So, when you moved to Florida, said around 8 or 9, did you go straight
Mhm.
into an academy, like in where you were doing like 2 sessions a day? So you started homeschooling pretty young.
Yeah, yeah. My parents took me out of school when I was in fourth grade, and we went to Rick Macy Academy in the Boca area. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think the setup there was like 8 to 11 a.m. and then 3 to 6 p.m. I think was the second session. So yeah, I would do both of those, and I think that was pretty much my day. I would do a lesson with Rick Macy here and there, and yeah, that was my day pretty much for a couple years.
Roughly, I mean, so you're playing double sessions. So I imagined you were getting some practice matches in already pretty young.
Yeah, yeah. I remember at Rick's, they it was a very competitive environment there. He loved having the kids play in the afternoons a ton. And yeah, I remember a ton of matches. I was playing a ton of matches there when I was younger, which is it's a good competitive environment because practice matches feel like I remember it was like the end of the world if I won or lost. So yeah, no, we definitely did a lot of that there.
Well, I know in a way that sounds like crazy that here you are playing practice matches and it feels like it's the end of the world. But at the same time, like you kind of feel that way when you lose a match or you're playing a match in a tournament in the first place. So by
Mhm.
getting these matches in, even though okay, this is a little bit too emotional of an attachment to a practice match, at least you're learning how to play within similar emotions that you will in a tournament. So you're actually getting a lot of practice within the most important area, which is how to handle your emotions and play matches.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, because a lot of kids don't get that. I mean, I don't know how much you've heard about it, but I would say most academies, not high performance academies, because I would say there's probably more recreational academies, after school
Mhm.
programs than there are high performance programs. Most kids start in that after school group, 4 to 6 or whatever. And there's almost no practice matches that are played there. But you
Really?
were able to, yeah. I mean, that's been the interesting thing. I went through the same thing because my dad was a professional tennis player, so was my mom,
Mhm.
and they ran the academy when I was growing up. So they only cared about high performance tennis, creating real successful tennis players. Maybe there was a recreational part. I never really took part in it. But because of
Mhm.
that, I was playing practice matches from before I can even remember. That's just what you did, right? They didn't
Yeah.
know anything else. you drill hard, you work hard, and you play matches, and that's fun. That's fun tennis for us. But most kids don't play practice matches, so you're actually getting quite an advantage at a young age. I know it led to some crossroads of burning out a little bit, and we'll get into that. But was there any point, because you're younger than me, I grew up in the area where UTR didn't really exist.
Mhm.
Was UTR ever a conversation? Were you ever looking at your results in that form? Were you looking at your rankings and ratings and looking at your opponents and all that?
Yeah, I think UTR started coming around for me at least when I was like 16, 15, 16, 17. And yeah, I remember everybody would be checking it. Everybody would be like, "Oh, this guy's a little bit ahead of me." I remember some people like they'd be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go close with this guy because he's better than me." So it's like an easy way out almost. But yeah, that UTR started being heavily involved in like the tennis world for I think my generation around when we were like 16, 17. So
How does that make you feel? Like when you, I wonder if you had similar thoughts. Like it drives me crazy to hear the thought when someone, because that's a big topic where they're like, oh, they're a higher UTR, I'm not supposed to win. So like if I keep it close, that's okay. But I
mhm.
mean, we live in the realm like, you just played a couple challengers. Like, are you really, you're not going to look at your opponent's ranking, big, oh, I'm supposed to lose. That's okay. It's like, no, like I'm in a pro tournament. Everybody's good. I got to find a way to win. I'm not going to try to
Mhm.
lose close and get my UTR up. So, I mean, did you fall into that trap a little bit because UTR was new? How did you handle all that?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I always thought my own UTR was a little like under lower than what I thought my level was. And yeah, so if I would look at a guy's UTR and he was way better than me, I'd be like, okay, like I think I'm just as good as this guy, and I know the levels are so close too. I mean, you flip 2 or 3 points in crucial times, and you can like beat a guy that's way higher UTR than you. But same goes for the ones that are below your rating as well. So I think the trap is when you maybe getting a little in your own head if you see a guy's UTR is below yours and they come out playing a really good level, and then the thoughts start coming in where, oh, I'm not supposed to lose to this guy, or like why is he playing this good when it's the level the way the tennis scoring system's set up, it's like the level, it's very thin margins. So I in high school I would look at it some, but I tried not to like get in my own way about it at all. And then as I've developed throughout the pros and stuff, I kind of use it. If I do use it in college, it's kind of just a gauge to give me a good little perspective on the level of the guy I'm playing. But also sometimes it's tricky because you can have a guy that's lower UTR, but that's very streaky, where he can go and win a week, a year, and then but that doesn't show on UTR because it's showing your last 20 or 30 matches, I believe. So you really gotta. I think it's a great way to gauge the level, but I don't think it should be used in the way of, yeah, if this guy's above me, I should be losing, or if he's below me, I should be winning, because the level's really close.
Yeah, I wish UTR was there when I was growing up. It would have been interesting to see how I handled it. But I remember, you know, even my first year in college, right? I mean, I played two most of the year. I think I ended up with around a 500 record. So I had a good start and then really fell off at the end. But then my next
Mhm.
year, I didn't really have any major results in the summertime that would have changed my UTR. But then I got put at number one to get started, and I only had like 5, 6 losses my sophomore year. It would have been
Yeah,
really interesting because I'd never really done anything to prove majorly that I was ready to make this jump. But I knew, like, I remember that December, I worked my tail off,
yeah,
and I made some changes in my game. I just came back to school that spring. I'm like, I know I can do something here. I know I've been proving it, but I'm ready to work. And sure enough, like, started beating all these ranked guys, and I just was able to sustain it. It would have been interesting to see because I don't think UTR would have reflected that I was ready to win like that. But I knew
hmm
I was putting in the work. It was just kind of a matter of time. So I would have been interesting to see because I think that's a trap people fall into a lot as well as they look at their UTR to see like how good they are now versus the opponent they're playing. But and this is something that's why I think it's been so cool to watch you grow and be where you are because I got to see you when you were kind of 17, 18, and now watching you succeed in the pros. So I've seen you develop into that. But a lot of times, like when you're putting in good work, UTR doesn't reflect like if you made some great changes, you found a good coach, or you finally changed your training structure. And then you just need to work at that new thing or new structure for a few months, and then your game's going to take off. UTR can't tell you that,
Yeah.
but we could see with you, Riley would always make the jokes like, oh, Murphy's winning US Open this year, because
Yeah, I remember.
we could see you play some practice sets where we're like, when this kid gets it together, this
Mhm.
kid is going to be absolutely dangerous. And sure enough, here you are a couple weeks ago, you win a challenger event.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the trap. But I wonder if you were able to get out of it a little bit because you went to play ITFs as well when you were growing up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was in Missouri Valley. We never changed to Florida address. So I was playing the Missouri Valley tournaments growing, when I was in high school, until about 15 years old, I think. So yeah, we were in kind of a loop where I was winning almost all the tournaments, playing the same competition week in, week out. And we weren't seeing much develop. My coach with me at the time, we weren't seeing much development in my game, but just because I'm playing the same people every week, same scores relatively. Like I wasn't being challenged enough, and yeah. So we noticed that my level wasn't developing. We're like, okay, we need to change something. I had a really tough loss, I think, like November, December, and my coach just pulled me from the tournament and was like, yo, like we got to change something. This isn't working, and we've been doing this for a year almost. So after that, we made the decision, I think 2018, to really go and try and hit the ITF circuit. And it's also, I think, good to get out of the states, like away from the people you see every week, because it can be very. It's a lot. It's tough playing your friends. It's tough with knowing everybody too, knowing this guy, like what his level is and all that. So yeah, I remember our first tournaments. We went to South Africa, and we had no clue of the level of anybody there. So yeah, it's just allowed me to like just play almost and kind of show my level a little bit better than dealing with the other aspects that goes into like playing people you know. So
And then you kept going with it. So you tried it out, and then you kept going with it. You saw, hey, this is a pretty good route. I mean, then you started traveling a bit more.
mhm.
Did you ever have to make decisions on like, okay, should I go back and play more USTA or do I stick with ITF? How did you handle that? I'm sure you had that conversation at one point.
Yeah, so around that time, which I think was huge for me personally, is my coach had like a tough talk with my parents, like, yo, it needs to be handled between me and Murphy. Um, because he's gonna decide if he wants to be like good or not, pretty much, or if he's gonna want to put in the work. So it was all my coach handled everything, and we went to South Africa. We finaled the first week, and then I think won a round or two in the second. And I think from there he was like, okay, like good momentum here. Like let's stick to this and not go back to what we were doing. And yeah, we started chipping away at the ITF circuit, and I think I got up to 100, 150 in the world before COVID, which would have been my last year. So yeah, I think we committing to that plan was huge for me, and giving my parents giving me the space as well to just commit on my own was big also. So
Was that decision because usually there's an argument that can be made that you don't have to play these ITFs. You can just
mhm.
play Battle of Boca and the other UTR and in Newport Beach. You can kind of find higher levels if you're trying to find different opponents and stuff. Um, so, what made you stick to the ITF route? Was it just because there was something different, new players, or you were finally able to just develop the way you were looking for? Or was it
Mhm.
because a lot of times people play, like for me, I played ITS because I was trying to play pro. So I want
Yeah.
to play against international kids. I had already succeeded enough as a junior in the US. So you know what? That's the next level. I mean, was pro on your mind? Was that any part of your conversation? You just trying to get better?
Yeah, pro was definitely on the mind. I knew I wanted to play pro from a young age, but I think for me personally, even now, I struggle when I go. Sometimes struggle when I go in the U.S. and I play the people I know. I've noticed I do really well when I go international, where it's a new draw, new faces, new everything. So it's almost for me, it was more of a personal move as I was developing because I wanted to go. I just didn't do too well against people faces I knew, so it's something I even deal with now. some I've been working on as well. So that was a huge piece for us. And I think back then it was mostly for the pro, but then once we left the US, we realized, okay, like I'm doing better versus these guys who have no clue who they are, and it just almost allows me to play free and just play because there's no expectations on, oh, I should beat this guy, I should not. So I think it's good. Like if you do the UTR stuff to get the high level and it's working for you, I think it's keep doing it. But yeah, if you're not gaining any ground there, it's definitely, I think, good to go and try out the international space and try out just a new environment almost of faces you don't know, and just give yourself new competition.
Yeah, that's good to know that there's a different option out there. A lot of
Mhm.
times, we just get stuck within playing the same players, and we kind of force it down, upon these kids. Like, well, you have to figure it out. You got to figure out how to be your friends. It is what it is. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, why don't we just go play a different tournament? Try something new. Give it a week or two. Um, and a lot of times what that can also do is if you do experience some success, it can actually bring some confidence back to where you were in the first place
Mhm.
because you're just seeing yourself win a few more matches than normal. So you just feel like, okay, I'm actually improving. Like I'm ready to take on anybody else now. Um,
Yeah.
so, but just to kind of circle it back, did you ever have to make decisions on like, did you ever skip any of the big L1s, Easter Bowl, Kalamazoo, clay courts? Did you skip any of those to play ITFs, or when you could, you would go back and play those?
Yeah, we after that year in 2017, I think I played almost all of them, the L1s, L2s. After that year, we just made the full commitment to ITFs, and my parents didn't like it because I mean, growing up, it's all about the USTA tournaments. But me and my coach were like, "Yo, like I think this is the route for me," and we decided to stick with the ITF circuit and try and make a path for ourselves there, and not so much worry about the L1s and all that because we're still getting good matches with the other guys. So yeah, that was a big decision for us to skip those, which it was a tough decision too, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you never know quite which route is going to work out.
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever remember. He's a little bit older than me, but actually, he's a year older than me. But I don't know if you ever remember the name Ryan Sweeting. So Ryan Sweeting,
Mhm.
growing up, he was. I mean, I beat him in some ITFs. And here he was. He would stay a lot around the Caribbean ITFs and all that stuff, and a lot of times would miss some of the higher ITFs and just kind of pick up a couple of points in the Caribbean and just kind of stay up there, but never really like branched out to play like the biggest ITFs everywhere, right?
Mhm.
And then just kind of snuck in to the U.S. Open as like one of the last people to get in main draw, and he won U.S. Open Juniors unseeded at like 60, 65 in the world, which is kind of unheard of. Usually, it's the top players that are probably going to win those major slams.
Yeah.
But he just kind of kept winning matches, kept his confidence up, snuck into these slams, uh, won the Junior US Open, got contracts, went pro, and won an ATP title, won Houston, got to 60 in the world as a pro. And it was interesting because I went a different route. Like as soon as I could get into the big ITFs, I played the big ITFs and just got smashed really young and just
Yeah.
kind of lost some confidence. And so I think with your route, look at there's different routes. And so it's like if one doesn't work out, it's okay to try another one. That doesn't mean, well, if you can't make it in USDA, well, you can't make it anywhere. Or if you can't make it, it's like maybe it's just the environment, maybe it's just the kids. Go try something new, and if it works, roll with it.
Yeah.
So, but how young, just to try to take it back to even the juniors again, how young were you when you first started playing these level ones? Because that's a question that a
Mhm.
lot of people think that, okay, how old can I be to like make up big ground, right? To
Yeah.
where I'm really behind in my development and I need to make a big jump to get into Division One. I want to hear your thoughts, and then I'll tell you what I've found.
Yeah. I actually I had an interesting kind of story or like pathway with mine. Like I wasn't good. I was in Florida playing the Florida tournaments when I was I think 10, 11, 12 years old, maybe 13 even. And I remember, yeah, I wasn't good enough honestly to get through in Florida at that level, and I was losing a ton. Yeah, I remember a lot of like tough losses, a lot of car rides home with the parents where I'm upset, they're upset, And yeah, I mean, I don't think I got into any L1s in the 12 and under age. And then my dad, he wanted to move back. He wanted to go back to Kansas for a year or two, just for his work and company. And it was someone gave us the idea like you can play Missouri Valley. It's on quote unquote a weaker section, which I mean Florida's the strongest one there is. So us going back there, I was able to get. I think if you were top four in your section, you get into the L1s and like Easter Bowl and all that. So yeah, I made my way there. I got top four in Missouri Valley, and then that's when. So when I was 14 years old was when I started playing those tournaments and able to get in. But even then, even getting into those, I was still losing. I remember, I think Easter Bowl, I lost first round, won my backdraw round, and then got killed the next round. So I was never, I was never making too much headway in the bigger tournaments when I was younger, and yeah, until I left for the ITFs.
So it's interesting. So when did you, or did you ever experience big success, in these level ones like Easter Bowl and Kalamazoo and clay courts?
No, never. I don't think I ever got past the second round in one of those. I think,
Eight through 18s.
yeah. I mean, I didn't play any in the 18s.
Okay.
Um, I did do, I think, 16's clay court nationals, and I got to the round of 16, which was my best result by far. And yeah, but I mean, that was my only decent result. I think I won three. I think it was three rounds in a row, and then I lost in the round of 16 to Jonah Braswell, who's like significantly younger than me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I think that was my only like decent run in the juniors.
And they're not playing the 18s. Was that because of ITFs and COVID?
Yeah, ITFs and COVID. I know I wanted to play clay courts once, but yeah, it just never got on my radar. I did play Kalamazoo 16s, and I lost first round, and then back draw immediately. So
Okay, interesting. Because what I had started to wonder was, if in the 12s, if by your last year at 12s, you weren't at least in those tournaments, not necessarily
mhm,
like winning rounds, but if you weren't getting in, it was just going to be almost impossible for you to get into like top Division 1 schools.
mhm,
But I mean, now you're saying like maybe even 14s. If you're just getting in by your second year of 14s,
mhm,
then it's like that means you're still showing enough level. But even then, you didn't have major results. And the reason why I bring that up is like that shows how much you're able to improve later in your junior years because,
mhm.
you know, semifinalists NCAA's last year, right?
Yes, yeah.
In singles. So you're one of the top, finished here as one of the top four players. Just won a challenger event a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, now college tennis has gotten tough. There's a lot of a lot of highly ranked ATP players, but now you're 300 in the world professionally, but you're still in
Mhm.
college, right? You have one more year of eligibility.
Yeah, one more semester. As an American, it's like it's a huge benefit for a college system because you can take all of your classes online depending on the school you choose. So what we're doing next year is, or well, this fall I was able to not take any classes because I'd been doing summer classes. So I got a little ahead on my degree that way because I knew I wanted to take this fall off from when I was like a freshman to allow myself to like really build my pro ranking and not defend a ton of points in the summer. And then going into next spring, I'll be all online again. And we're gonna a great aspect of college too is if your coach allows it, you can hybrid your schedule. So I'm gonna get in 8 to 10 pro tournaments, but I'm also gonna play all of the big matches on our schedule. So
Yeah, see, that's changed a lot. That wasn't a thing when I was playing college tennis. You were either in or out. Towards the end
mhm,
of my time, they started to throw in some more online classes, but it was very hard to like actually schedule. The board would be like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" Like, and you couldn't do it too long either. But
yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? I mean, so could you imagine? Because you skipped NCAs this year, right?
Or no, this year or yeah, this fall, yes, I skipped it. Yeah.
This fall, yeah, this one because they changed it right in the fall as opposed to the spring. They're
Mhm,
trying this new thing. But imagine when you were like, 14, 15, saying like, "No, I'm going to choose to skip NCAA's."
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, that shows how far you've come. That's really cool.
Mhm.
So, but I'm going to bring it back one more time to junior training and stuff, and I want to ask you about fitness.
Yeah.
Now, you started at Rick Macy's when you were in Florida.
Yeah.
So maybe it was around then, but when did you find when did fitness start being a part of your program? And not just running, but like doing even some light weights, some body resistance stuff to where it was like, hey, this is part of the program. Do you remember how old you were when that started?
Yeah, I remember at Rick Macy, there'd be an hour, so like 8 to 11 in the morning, and it would be that 10 to 11 time was like fitness, and then same with the afternoon. I think there's that last hour was fitness, but I'd always like not, I'd always get out of it just to play more tennis. But for me personally, I didn't really start taking that serious, or my family started taking that serious until I was about 15, I think, 14, 15. I think at a young age, yeah, just light weights, a lot of like body weight, and a lot of movement is great. But then, yeah, at 15, I started with Richard Woodruff in Florida, and yeah, we took it from there. It took me a couple years to really start developing much in the gym, just because I had never done much. But I think as you get older and as you progress through your teenage years, that's a huge aspect of going to be your development and your level of play on, honestly.
Well, I think the point I want to make, because when you're talking about working with Richard, so
Mhm.
I mean that's basically pro level fitness, a pro level mentality, doing things
Yeah.
as best as you possibly can. Obviously, he's going to progress you. It's not like he's going to start you that day one, but you were already doing some basic stuff with Rick Macy when you were 9, 10.
Yeah, there's a lot of like resistance bands. Like you'd put the band around your waist and do like the shuffle out with resistance, shuffle back. I remember a lot of like core based stuff with like the medicine balls, and a lot of like medicine ball stuff as well. Yeah, I don't remember too much from then, but yeah, I remember I would always try to get out of it and just play more tennis. But yeah, I don't remember too much from my fitness back then.
Well, the reason why I bring that up, because I mean you haven't been in this world. I've started to get in this
Mhm.
world in last 10 years a lot more, but I come across 14, 13, 14-year-old kids that say they want to play Division 1 college tennis and they barely do any fitness or gym work. Like
Yeah.
going to the gym is just not part of their academy structure because
Mhm.
maybe they don't have a gym on site and they're just too busy just running groups all day. Now, remember, these aren't the homeschool kids because most kids are not homeschooled.
Yeah.
So, like most after school programs don't really have a great strength and conditioning program. So,
Mhm.
the fact that I know maybe you didn't take it as seriously, but at 9, 10, I know kids 12, 13 that have barely done any resistance band work. It's not even
Yeah.
part of like their warm up routine. Maybe you didn't like doing it or take it that seriously, but you were already building some sort of base when you were young, even if it wasn't as intense as it was with Richard. Um,
Mhm.
so because like when you were 15, you're now building the workouts you're doing, because I know those workouts, you're trying to become one of the fittest players in the world at your age.
Yeah.
That's the work Richard's trying to do. You're not just, "Oh, I'm gonna just do some work, get some weights in, and just start building." You already have a base to build off of. So I think like kids need to realize that when they're going up against, the Murphy of 15, 16, 17,
Mhm.
and you want to try to position yourself to get in to become what you are, which I didn't know this because I didn't look at rankings growing up, but you were the number one tennis recruit. I saw it on the tennis recruiting list.
Yeah, my
So
last year.
yeah, I mean that's cool. I mean
Yeah.
that's amazing. But to work up to that, there are a lot of kids that are not doing that kind of work at all. But would you say that that was pretty normal for the group of the best kids your age growing up at 15, 16, 17?
Yeah, one thing I always like see and I believe in is the kids that are just developed physically at the younger ages are the ones that are going to succeed almost. I mean, I look back and the kids that were winning tournaments were like Adam Neff, Martin Dam, and they're bigger than everybody else and just stronger, if I remember right. So, or you had the Aiden Mayos who were just incredibly good shape and good movement, and they were just tracking down every ball. So, yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, honestly, from a young age. And then
Yeah.
just developing that, but not overdoing it as well, because the bodies are still developing a ton. So it's a really thin or finite like way to do it, I think. But having somebody that like knows what they're doing and having somebody that has great knowledge in that area is huge for a younger player. Because I mean, in all sports, I think the kids that are developed physically at the earliest stages are set up for success way better on down the road.
Yeah.
So,
Because the questions I get so much are about either something technical or
mhm,
about just how to be mentally tougher in points, right? How to handle the stresses of matches better. But I never get questions on, hey, I need to be physically fitter. I need to be tougher out there. I need to get in better shape. No one ever talks about that. And yet I
yeah,
go watch them and I'm like, I watch their warm up and it's pathetic. I look at their gym workouts and I'm like, okay, look, for the level of fitness you have, like that's pretty basic. But
mhm,
if you were to go sit next to 15-year-old Murph, he's blowing you out of the water, working 10 times harder, doing a lot more work. And you
mhm,
ask why Murphy's tougher than you and able to play like a higher level of tennis for a longer period of time, is because he's ready for it. So that's why I wanted to ask that, because I think kids start taking the fitness part seriously way too late. And I don't mean
mhm,
like at 11, you should be like destroying yourself in the gym, huge back squats. Like you were starting, like you said, core work, resistance, weight, band, what stuff. You started that base when you were like 10, 11, not 14, 15.
mhm.
So that was really cool to see. Um, but now I want to get to the part where, so you've worked your way up, you're the number one recruit in Arizona State. Forgive me for asking this question because you guys are going to get offended by this. But why Arizona State? Like because the easy
Mhm.
one would be go somewhere that's recently won a championship, right?
Yeah.
Now, look, I was recruited by Georgia and Illinois and Florida State, and I showed Florida State, who had never won a championship. So I understand this, and it's funny because Georgia and Illinois actually played each other in the final of my freshman year, and we lost second round. I was like, oh man. But so to get back to you, I mean, why not somebody like USC or Virginia or somebody that's won championships? And frankly, like other than one player who's really come out of Arizona State in the last 30, 40 years to say, you have a good chance of being pro here. I want to know what your thought process was and how did you work with that? What were your list of schools? What did you look for and all that?
Yeah, so an issue that popped up for me from playing the ITFs was, and especially during COVID when the recruiting season was at its prime, a lot of the coaches had not seen me play tennis at all, so they had no clue. They just saw my results, saw my ranking, and
But what about
I
your
think
UTR? I mean, was UTR like pretty accurate back then?
so. Yeah, my UTR was probably like a 12.7, 12.8, and I think when I was getting recruited, I was number 2 in my class, I think.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, they didn't see me play. So really, Arizona State and one other school were the only schools giving me an offer I thought I deserved or thought I had earned through my like my results. And with COVID and like all the fifth years coming back, there was a lot of uncertainty, and I don't think the coaches wanted to take the risk on me not seeing me have played at all. So that was a huge decision for me. But yeah, I mean, I was actually calling to commit to USC, um, and as I was ringing the coach, my coach from Kansas was like, called me. Like, he was in London, so it was like 3 a.m. His time, and he just woke up in the middle of the night. He was like, I need to call Murphy for whatever reason. And yeah, as I was calling that coach, he called me, and I like hung up and then answered my coach from Kansas. And he was like, yo, what are you doing? And I was like, I was calling the USC coach to commit. He's like, why? Like, and he went into that. And yeah, I mean, if like USC, I probably would have been on the bench my first year or two, honestly. Whereas at ASU, I was going to play one, and I had that opportunity to really get high level matches in and able to improve my level, and which worked out. I was the number one freshman in the country my first year there. So, whereas if I went to a different school, I would have been on the bench or playing 5, 6, and I would have never had that chance to really prove my level. So, yeah, for me, it was Matt too. Was also really believed in me. I thought even when I would like have really bad weeks during the summer or whenever he would come visit me, like if I had bad losses or whatever, he was always in my corner. Like, oh, it's a part of it. Like, keep improving. So those aspects were huge for me. And yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go to a top school as well. I wanted to try and create something at a like a 10 to 15, 20 in the country school. I didn't so you go to Ohio State, you know you're going to be top 5 every year. You know it's going to be what it's going to be like under Ty Tucker. Like, you know how brutal it's going to be there, and you're going to work hard as well, but it's laid out for you there almost. Whereas you kind of I went to ASU and I kind of wanted to create my own path and create my own way at that school as well.
Yeah, that's why I chose Florida State. I was a Florida State fan growing up, and I was just like, if Florida State did anything good without me being there, I'm just going to live to regret it. So I'd rather try to give it a shot. But so before you got any offers, before you had spoken to any schools, and you knew you're going to go to college and not just go play pro right away, because I do think things have changed even since the time you arrived at school.
Mhm.
Going to college now seems more like just almost a sure thing. Even if you want to go pro, going to college, spending a year or three there, just better. With the structure's changed, online classes,
Yeah.
NIL, better players are going now. But when you first made the decision, all right, I'm going to go to college. Now,
Mhm.
what were your list of schools where you're like, all right, these are the schools I'm interested? Again, before you got offers, which
Yeah.
ones were you interested
I didn't really fully consider college till like the recruiting started. I thought growing up, I always thought it was either I need to be a pro tennis player or I like failed, and it's like I shouldn't play anymore. So that was something I had to work through. And then once the recruiting started, yeah, I mean, you obviously want to go to the top schools like Texas, Ohio State, USC, um, and then all the other ones. I don't remember them too well. Like Virginia as
in? Yeah.
well. There's some I never talked to, but some that were calling me every day from the top schools. But yeah, I wanted to go to the top schools, and then I also wanted some good academic schools or like schools that be like, oh, I'm going here, like so like you look cool or pads the resume. But I'd say it's more about what you can get on all aspects: tennis, schooling, coaches. So yeah, I mean, I was really heavy on Texas and USC early on, and then as the recruiting process went on, it was more towards where I could get the best for my tennis and where the best financially for me and my family. So Arizona State really like showed that they were there for me. Matt was calling me every match, every day, like very whether I won or lost, he was there, like helped me out. So I think that was huge for me.
Arizona State wasn't in there in the beginning. That came in a little bit later. Again, I think this is a process many people will go through where it's you think these are your list of schools, but then as you
Mhm.
finally get in the process and you learn about other things, other schools come in mind. Now, you don't have to name the schools, but you did mention this, and which was, there were some schools that maybe either didn't give you the attention or the offers that you thought
Mhm.
you deserved. How
Yeah.
did that feel? Here you are, you have some schools in mind. Like if they give you what you want, it's almost a sure thing that you're going there. That's what your original
Yeah.
thought is. And then you don't get what you want. And how did you take that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was really young, so like, I mean, I'm number two in my class, and one of the schools told me I'd play and earn my scholarship, and like, it was a school I really wanted to go to just because of the name of the school, and I was like, I was like almost like okay, I like this school though. Then my coach was like, "Yo, that's crazy! Like, play and earn, you're number two in your class. Like, that's unheard of." So, yeah, I mean, it made me doubt a little bit. I'm like, is my level lower than what it seems, or are the coaches just like lowballing me? Which I think a lot of players go through the process and they rush it too, where it's like, okay, like I have this school, they're a top school, and the process gets rushed and it ends up not being the right fit. So I think it really helped me that the schools like were not offering me what I deserved, because I think if they did, I would have rushed the process and wouldn't have enjoyed where I ended up. But yeah, like I remember one school. I remember Ty Tucker. Like he physically couldn't offer me the cash I needed, because he had like John McNally, who's top 10 in the country, coming back. Another senior on the team that was coming back as well, and he's like, "Yo, like I would love to have you, but I mean, I gotta pick these guys, over a younger recruit." And I thought I respected how he told me the truth, and and I really appreciated that. But then other schools, yeah, would just were giving me like 1 year scholarship and or something like that, and I was just like, this isn't this isn't what I value myself at. So I also wanted to go somewhere where I thought I was valued and yeah, knew they cared about me. So
What you proved though, which is really good, that you didn't just go to the best school on paper. You
mhm,
went to the best fit, the place you really wanted to go to, the place you felt like you would be cared for and that
mhm,
you could develop in. And with that mix, that's where you could really flourish. Because if you go
mhm,
to a place that maybe is better on paper, but maybe you're not cared for the same, it's not the same environment that's best for you, it's not a
yeah,
great fit, you're going to crumble and you're going to get worse as not only a player, a student, as a person, and then who knows where things go. So I think what I loved about what you did is you looked for the best fit within everything that you wanted. And because of that, then you found I got this question yesterday. Like, what do you do with somebody that has low motivation? And one of the things I'm like, well, I don't know the player, but you know, how much do they enjoy the environment they're in? How much do they
mhm,
enjoy their coaches, their teammates, the people they practice with, the overall environment? Because maybe they're not in a place where they can really flourish because it's not for them. So maybe it's not a tennis motivation thing. We don't know. Maybe it is a tennis thing. But if you just put that same person in a better environment that fits them, even if it's not the best thing on paper, they
mhm,
can create what is now. I mean, the attention that you're bringing to Arizona State is like, well, if Murph can come out of there and look
mhm,
what he's done, you're one of the best players in college. You're 300 in the world as a pro, and you haven't even played a full season yet. So
mhm,
now everyone's like, well, now I can go to Arizona State. So you
yeah,
created, I mean, so I love that. A lot of times people search for too many of the greatest things on paper and they don't
mhm,
search for the right fit. And that's really cool what you did. I want to ask you, I've been saying this. I want to know if you think this is true. Now, you're in the middle of it, you're in the heart of it in college tennis. I've felt that the top players in college tennis are, maybe this isn't the right words, but in a sense, I call them failed pros because they wanted to be pros as juniors, but they just weren't good
mhm,
enough. So they just continued their progression in college. But basically, the top players in college tennis have some sort of professional aspirations. Would
mhm.
you say that's accurate, or no? A lot of these guys, even though they're some of the best in college, they're, as soon as they graduate, they're done. They're getting a job and they're quitting.
Yeah, I think for sure the top 10 to 15 guys all have pro aspirations. You might have one or two in there that don't. It's just how it is. But yeah, I'd say 13 to 14 out of the top 15 guys all are going to go on to play after they're done.
And so, what do you think about if I were to say they started training like a pro when they were like 15, 16, 17? They put in that fitness with Richard. They dedicated more time, they traveled to more tournaments, and they really went all in. And that's what made them be great, because they have these pro aspirations. Because I ask this because so many people are afraid of talking about like wanting to be pro, or they
Mhm.
have this like, well, I just want to be a college Division 1 player. And I've always felt like you always kind of fall just below what you were actually shooting for. So if you shoot
Yeah.
really high, you're going to fail but land still in a really good place. But if you just shoot barely enough, even if you're barely going to get there, and you're actually not going to get to the level that you're hoping for. And it's players like you that were just trying to maximize their tennis every single day. There was never this thought like, well, I'm not going to be a pro, so I'm done for I'm done for the day. Like, I'm tired or I'm sore. It's okay. I'm not going to be a pro. I mean, what do you think when
Yeah.
I say all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge piece of it. And too, it's something I've had to work on too. Like, oh, my goal was I was outside. I think this year my rankings dropped a ton. I was like 6, 700 in the world. And I was like, my goal was 500 in the world. And I was like, no, I gotta change that and bump it up, because it is possible you have a good week like I did, and now your goals are flipped. So, and also it keeps you from, let's say your goal is to be 500 of the world or 500 ITF, and you're in the finals of a tournament and you're like so close to achieving the goal you set out. It's gonna mentally be very tough to overcome that situation, because it's everything you've been thinking about and training for. So I think, yeah, setting those high goals is huge for the players, because also that way, if you don't achieve those goals, you're still landing somewhere pretty good usually, and it's not the end of the world too if you're not achieving those. But yeah, I mean that's a huge piece of it, and it's like I always tell the guys on my team, like some people on my team are like, oh, I want to play six or I want to play five, and I'm like, no, like shoot to play like three, two or three. That way you're training that way, and like your level is just going to progress way quicker than if you're shooting to play five or six. So
You're just going
yeah,
to do the work that's just enough for 5 or 6, so they actually
yeah.
don't improve enough. Yeah.
I mean, for me, my freshman year, I had a terrible fall. And then that winter was when I really developed. But going to that spring, every practice I would show up, I'd be like, okay, practice like you're practicing at the US Open or prepping for the US Open. And that was kind of my thing every day. And it like forced me to focus like I was at the US Open almost. And I think that was a huge helper in my level and consistency throughout that freshman year of college where I really developed.
I want to finish off with just this one little part because I think it's important to see how you push through and manage it. You talked about the time where you got a little burnt out when you first got into high school. Clearly, you kept going, you pushed through. How did you find a way through? Was that burnout because of maybe your results weren't as good, or just honestly overtraining? Where did that come from? And then how did you find a way through? Did you have to take some time off? How did you change things to be where you are now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was my coach. I think a lot of tennis parents can be overwhelming to their kid, and it's my coach is like, "Yo, you got to be his parents. You got to be his mom and dad, not his tennis gurus." So my parents really took a step back and allowed me to bring it into my own hands and decide what I want to do with it. I think that helped me out a ton. And also, I think a lot of when you're younger, I think a lot of people don't take time off from the sport. So I think taking a week off or maybe even 2 weeks off, but you're still doing fitness, still doing some other things to keep you a little busy. I think that's huge to so you don't burn out. I mean, right now I'm taking a week off from practicing and I'm just doing gym, so I can reset the mind and all that. I think that's a huge piece of it as well. And then also, I think for I never really did it too much, but I think for the younger kids, finding like a hobby outside of tennis as well, so your whole identity isn't involved in tennis, and it helps just with the mental aspect of when you're playing the sport as well. Even during matches, is like, okay, I'm not just a tennis player, so if I lose, it's not the end of the world. I think those three things really helped me develop and not get burned out as much. Like I didn't really start enjoying the sport until I got to college and I started finding these other ways to to almost not get burnt out, but also just enjoy the sport some. So yeah, I think that's huge.
What an important moment, right? Where your coach was able to be mature enough, strong enough to sit down and talk to your parents and be like, hey,
Mhm.
if you want your son to succeed or have a better chance at achieving better results, this is what we need from him. And that how
Yeah.
important is it to have a coach that's willing to sit down, talk to your parents, and just say, hey, because look, I bring this up because that is not normal for most
Hmm.
kids. Maybe the coach will give like one little shot, like, hey, maybe don't talk to him, give him a break. And they just don't spend enough time talking to the parents and really helping them through the process. So, I mean, that was huge what your coach did.
Yeah, I think a lot of academies and coaches nowadays have become more involved around just racking in as much money as they can. But my coach then really cared about me, and yeah, it's huge that he did that, and it's also I think pretty it was pretty good that my parents, with the amount of money and the amount of time they spent, be like, okay, like I'm gonna take a step back because I mean it's an investment almost. They're investing in their kid, and they've put the most hours in out of anybody. So to like for them to take a step back as well was very I mean very mature and like good of them, and I think it helped the development of me a ton. Yeah, and then the coach finding a coach that actually cares about the player and not isn't so involved in just racking in as much money as they can, giving you personalized training, giving you personalized like coaching when you're at tournaments. I mean, that's massive. That's one of the reasons I love Matt at ASU, and that's one of the reasons the coach I have now is someone who's worked with me since I was like 17, and yeah, I think it's a huge part of a player's development and just them being able to enjoy the sport. Because if the coach cares about the player, it's going to be more about it's going to be less about the tennis and more about just the process and finding ways to get better, not the results. So
Yeah. Yeah. And what was your coach part of an academy at that time, or was it just a private coach, like completely separate?
my coach David Fox, he was working at an academy in Kansas because
Okay.
I spent some time there in high school, and then he would travel with me a ton. But I would do almost everything privately with him. And then he was a player too. He's like 900 in the world, so I was able to train with him pretty easily. And then yeah, so he was never I was never involved in the academy stuff though. Once I got past like 14, 15 years old.
Yeah. I just think that's awesome how, he was strong enough to have that conversation. A lot of coaches don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation because some parents, they don't, they fire back, they take that step back, they push back really hard, and then it can become very tense. And he could have easily just not said anything, and if things went bad for you financially, he would have been fine. You would have moved
Yeah.
on at some point anyway, and he could have kept working where he was, and it wouldn't have made
Mhm.
a difference. But he really cared for you, and had a tough conversation with your parents, and the trust that your parents put in with him, and took that step back. Because I think everyone wants the best for their child. I don't know a single parent that is trying to sabotage their child's career.
Yeah.
But I think the difficult part in tennis is that it's not like team sports where so much is just set and organized. This is the schedule. This is the coach. Can't really go anywhere else. These are the teams you're playing, and that's that. Tennis, you can play this tournament, that circuit, or this circuit. You can be in Boca, and you can go to this academy or that academy, or you can change academies and when there's
Yeah.
options, and really, no one's going to really stop you, right? The families can really just do that.
Yeah.
So that they need to help to not make well, I just say everyone's going to make wrong decisions. I'll say wrong decisions with the best of intentions. If we can just minimize that, which is what I'm trying to do with this podcast, like try to get people that start doing your fitness earlier, find a coach who's willing to talk to the parents, play some different tournaments. You don't have to go to your favorite like top 5 schools that you think were the best for you. You can go find a
Yeah.
better fit. That's what we're trying to do. Trying to help people limit how many mistakes they make so that just in time you're able to then flourish right when it happens. So Murph, just look, really thank you for your time. Try to help junior tennis players and parents, and I hope everybody listens to this because I think it's a great education, and great to hear your story. It's been really fun to see you improve. We met when you were 17, 18, and gosh, keep it going, man. It's great.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for having me, JY. Appreciate it.
All right, see you, man. Thanks.